All right, good evening, everyone. This is Gary Trendle, Chair of the Planning Board. So at this point, I will call our meeting for 5 p.m. on August 18th, 2020. As a preliminary matter, permit me to confirm all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. So members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Jane Moran.
Jane Moran, President.
Dave Paul.
Dave Paul, present.
Mary Larson Marlowe.
Mary Larson Marlowe, present.
Deborah Feinberg.
Deborah Feinberg, present.
And then let's see, Rob Benson.
He's joining now.
He's joining.
On again.
Rob Benson.
Here.
Are you present? Thank you. And then it looks like we do not have Sundar. And then Muriel Kramer.
Muriel Kramer here.
Sundar is joining right now.
Okay.
Fun.
Who is that guy running the meeting?
Sundar Sivarman, can you hear us? Are you there?
Yes, I just joined. I'm here. Yes, I can hear you.
All right. We're just getting started. All right. So, again, good evening. This open meeting of the Hopkinton Planning Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we are complying with the executive order that suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. All members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The executive order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely as long as the public body makes provisions through adequate alternative means to ensure interested members of the public are provided reasonable access to the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. This meeting will further include several, actually doesn't include any public hearings. For this meeting, the planning board is convening by video conference via Zoom app as posted on the town's web meeting calendar and the board's agenda identifying how the public may join. Additionally, the meeting may also be broadcast by HCAM through one or many of its channels or platforms. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please, we can skip that part. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website via the web meeting calendar unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. Meeting business ground rules. We will now turn shortly to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. Please remember to mute your phone. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in dialogue with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. After members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment as follows. The chair will first ask members of the public who wish to speak to identify their names and addresses. Once the chair has a list of public commentators, I will call each of you by name and afford 3 minutes for each comment. Again, thanks everyone for the flexibility in this meeting that we called last week. And I'll give a little bit of background. And of course, it has to do with the town meeting articles that we have recommended for the warrant. I'll try to quickly summarize, and John, if you want to weigh in or correct me when I misspeak, please do so. But the select board, as many of you are aware, has been working through how to safely conduct a town meeting in a pandemic. And they're just a little bit of background. They are, I think it is tentatively scheduled for Saturday, September 12th, with a rain date. And the plan is to conduct it outdoors under a tent. and they recognize that we need to have a town meeting, and the ask of the moderator and the select board and our town administration is that we limit the articles that we request go before town meeting to things that are essential for operation of our town government. And so they have requested that we withdraw all of our articles for town meeting. But that being said, it's really up to us to determine which articles, if any, we choose to withdraw. So, that's really, that's why we're meeting on our first meeting tonight, is to discuss that. Given that our next meeting is not scheduled until after town meeting, we were not in a position to push this to a further date. So our objective over the next 50 minutes or so is to determine as a group, again, which, if any, of the articles that we have recommended for town meeting we would choose to withdraw. So, John, did I miss anything there? Is there anything that you want to add to it?
Nope, that covered everything. Just some details on the date that I think you said September 12th is the town meeting date. September 13th is the rain date. That's a Sunday. So hopefully the town meeting will be held on a Saturday. And I think that's it.
Okay. So, and I had a meeting last week with our moderator, with our town council, and with Mr. Kamalo. It's a little bit unfortunate because, of course, at our last meeting we went through and again recommended these articles for town meeting, and now we're in a position where we might actually withdraw them.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, of course, Meryl. Go ahead.
Do we have a time for Saturday, the 12th?
I don't know officially what time. I want to say it's noon, but I don't know for sure.
I think, John, it was earlier. On Saturday, it was earlier, and then if we pushed to the rain date on Sunday, that was going to be a later start. So you would be more up to date than I would, but I thought that when we had talked last week...
I haven't heard anything. I don't remember what they said. I thought it was noon, but I could be remembering that wrong. That was the first I had heard of the date change, so I haven't got any communication or anything like that.
Okay. So I'll just throw this out there. As we went through the articles that we have, and those would be, see if I can get my Roman numerals right. Article 19, non-conforming lots, uses, and structures to allow for a waiver issued by the zoning enforcement officer for certain uses that do not alter the footprint. Wireless telecommunications facilities, bringing those up to standard. Article 18, remove the requirement that occupants of accessory dwelling units be family. So modification of that. The downtown business districts, to remove car washes as a use allowed by special permit. Article 8A, correct the numbering so that it is to be consistent with the rest of the zoning bylaw. Amend Article 27, temporary signs, to allow for additional temporary signage for businesses. Those first six, to me, at least in my opinion, are non-essential, and personally I would be willing to withdraw those in order to help ensure safety of the town meeting. I think the one that probably warrants a little bit more discussion is the commercial solar overlay article. So at this point, I'll open up and see if people have thoughts. But my inclination would be to focus the bulk of our discussion tonight on the commercial solar overlay, because I think it's a tricky one, because on one hand, that's the one that would likely invoke the most discussion at town meeting, and so in the interest of trying to move things quickly, that one is probably going to add a lot of time into the town meeting proceedings. But also, I think it's the one that, if there was one that we wanted to include here, it would probably be that one.
So Gary, this is Dave. My initial thought is I agree with you about the first 6. I'm okay with that, but I would like to see number 7 on the meeting.
I'm sorry, I had a hard time hearing you, Dave.
So I agreed with Gary that 1 through 6, I'm okay with postponing those. But number 7, the solar, I'd like to keep that on the meeting.
And I concur with your general thoughts, Gary, as that the first 6 are non-controversial and can easily be postponed, and I have no problem with that. And I do think we should discuss the solar overlay a little bit more.
So let's do this. Would anybody object to, or we'll take a formal vote on this, but is there anyone that disagrees that the first 6 that I just referenced, that we could withdraw those? Yes, Muriel.
I don't necessarily disagree. I just, I guess I want to keep it open. If we were to keep the solar overlay, which is the most controversial and difficult, I think the others are relatively administrative. So I wonder necessarily why we wouldn't just zip through them, but maybe oversimplify. I guess that's my initial thought. If we're going to have any, I'd like to at least talk about the reality of getting them all done, because I don't think the others are going to take time or bring people to the meeting, be more controversial.
So one sec, Rob. My only reaction to that, Muriel, is that the accessory dwelling units one warranted a lot of discussion at town meeting previously, as did the car wash one. I realized that was a separate, unrelated topic, but I do think that car washes is a theme that people want to talk about.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Thank you. I just wanted, if we're going to keep any, I personally want to choose to do the thing that makes the most sense and is the safest and so forth. But if we're going to keep any, we might keep some that aren't controversial, or we might just, I don't know. It's not that easy.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, if I may jump in on that.
Yes, please.
I think the intent from town council, town moderator, and the town manager was to remove any chance of increasing participation in that sense. And so even though they might be non-controversial to us, they may draw out some people, and withdrawing them completely kind of removes that concern.
Yeah.
Whereas if you leave them on there, there might be some unforeseen controversy that we didn't think of, and it could draw a certain neighborhood out or something like that. So I think it was just kind of to remove all potential of that.
Rob, did you have some thoughts?
Yeah, so my first thought is trying to pare down the town meeting to remove anything that's going to warrant people showing up and warrant discussion is the exact opposite directive of the town meeting. So I am not really in favor of removing any of these. The interest is directly related to how important I think they are. So solar, I think that's the highest, and that's going to draw the most people. Then maybe car washes, number 2, that's going to draw the second most people. Accessory dwelling units, number 3, and so on. So the ones that are less important is going to draw less people. But if we can't, as a town, if we can't figure out how to have a town meeting where people can discuss it, then we should, I'm not on the select board, I don't need to figure it out, but I think the whole premise to try to have a town meeting where there's nothing to be discussed and we don't want to draw people to it is just wrong.
Yeah, so I think the difference there, though, is that there are some things that need to be discussed in order for the town to move forward, specifically things like budget. And I hear what you're saying. I think that's the challenge here, is that the things that are most important to us are also the ones that are going to warrant the most discussion and the most people to attend. But the reality is that, to your point, if we can't do it safely, then we should just not have a town meeting. Well, that's the same output as us withdrawing articles that are not essential for the town to continue to operate moving forward over the next 9 months or so. Yes, and actually, Jane, sorry, Deb, hang on one second. Jane's politely had her hand raised in Zoom, so Jane, go ahead.
No worries. I think I'm coming from this from a different perspective in that I think it's really important to try and keep people safe. And I think the town meeting this year probably should focus on money items and how we can keep the town operating, and also to try and keep our folks safe. So I'm not sure that there's anything in our proposals that can't wait. And also, just a question, has anyone heard any discussion about when a follow-up town meeting could be? Usually, a lot of times they're within 6 months, for one reason or another. And I'm just wondering if any of those things, because of the safety reason, if any of these things really justify not waiting.
So I haven't heard anything from a follow-up perspective other than our next annual town meeting, which would be the first week of May 2021.
I'm also, candidly, if I could say through you, Mr. Chair, a little worried about May 2021, to be honest with you. I'm not sure that we're going to be back in full action then either.
There's a lot of unknowns out there. Go ahead, Deb.
Can I ask a question? When is the downtown corridor project taking off? What was the date? It just came out, didn't it?
I know the bidding process was delayed.
Spring of 2021.
Okay, so that could get pushed back then. Okay, I was kind of wondering about timing as well.
Are there any articles related to that?
The
Yes.
temporary signage.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay, so what I'm hearing here is, so Rob is opposed, or at least preliminary is opposed to withdrawing any of the articles. I think we're all somewhat aligned that we need to discuss the commercial solar overlay. Are there any other objections to withdrawing the first six? Everything except the commercial solar overlay.
quick process question.
Yes, Dave.
Is there only a physical attendance at the town meeting, or will there be any Zoom option?
All in person.
Thank you.
To Jane's point, when is the next town meeting? Has there been any kind of date thrown out there? Are they usually 6 months apart?
To my comment earlier, it would be the first week of May, which is our typical annual town meeting.
Right.
And to
I
Muriel's
know
point,
that they
that's not,
call special town meetings for various reasons.
Yeah, that's fair.
And that might be an option for the select board to consider, is if they want to take the step in half, or make it less cumbersome for everybody, maybe they can plan another one a little bit later.
so one quick
By everybody.
comment for the chair.
So just one sec. And Jane, I would agree. They definitely could. For tonight, we've just got to make a decision as to what we're doing for this town meeting, and we don't have any information about when the next town meeting would be, except for the regularly scheduled annual town meeting. So go ahead, Dave.
I just wanted to point out that, along with what Muriel said, that there's no guarantee for May. So I mean, I would look at this is our opportunity for what we want to present, and there's no guarantee when the next one will be.
Yep, that's true. Okay, so it sounds like we've got a little bit of mixed reviews. We're going to have to vote on this at some point, but let's move to the commercial solar overlay district. And and again, I think the challenge here is that from a safety perspective, they're trying to limit the time that we convene at town meeting. This is one that I'm pretty confident would enlist a lot of discussion and potentially take some time. That's because people have a lot of interest in it, and and candidly, there is, I think, some potential impact of this one being delayed. But I know that a few people have already commented on their belief that this should stay on the agenda, but I'll open it up at this point. Do people have specific reasons why, or do they have as to why they think it should stay on or should not?
I would like to start with a clarification.
Sure.
Okay, I just
Go
have
ahead,
a
Mary.
question, and I think this will be helpful to all of us as well as town members who may be participating today. And I would just like to clarify what, if anything, will happen with the Seaboard Solar property. If the overlay district, which does not include that property, is passed by town meeting on September 12th. So theoretically.
Then it would invalidate the approval that we voted on at the last meeting.
Thank you. I think that was just an important clarification before we begin the discussion.
For the chair.
Okay. Hang on, Rob was next. Go ahead, Rob.
So the problem we're faced with, if we don't have, the problem the town is faced with is there's no way to know an exact number of solar projects that will come before us. But in the past year, we've had a handful, and chances are we'll have another handful of solar projects that come before us until the next time we have a chance to put in any type of bylaw to help preserve forests and lands and protect homeowners from having a solar farm right next in their backyard. So any homeowner that has unoccupied land that could potentially be a solar farm near them lives kind of in fear that they could have the solar farm right near them. So the longer my point is, the developers are not going to not take action because we don't take action. They're still moving forward. They got to maximize the value of their land, and if that means a solar farm on a 4-acre parcel, they're going to do it. If anything they can get away with, they're going to do to maximize the value of their land. And there are a lot of homeowners that have talked at our meetings that are fearful that they're going to have a solar farm adjacent to their property. And you could say, well, it's not going to happen in my backyard, but a lot of people live in fear in this town, and we'd be doing a disservice if we didn't try to do something that in the best interest of the townspeople.
Yeah, I think that weighs heavily on all of us. Just two quick responses to that. One, just as a reminder, and John, correct me if I'm not quite sure the best way to describe this, but if we were to hold a public hearing on let's just say that hypothetically if we withdrew, and then we open a public hearing in January, then that's when the clock starts. So effectively, an applicant would have to submit a commercial solar project before we open that hearing on a commercial solar overlay district. Is that correct, John?
Kind of.
Not quite. Okay.
It's when the hearing notice is published. And it doesn't necessarily start a clock. That is essentially the deadline. If they don't submit an application before that point, before the public hearing notice is published, they are not guaranteed that they will conform to zoning. So if you held a hearing in January and you published it at the end of December, it would be the end of December. That would be the deadline for any applications. And it would have to be a complete application.
Muriel.
Yeah, I'm actually really torn because, the issue of public safety is a real one. And if we're going to have, an article, at town meeting, I think we might as well mostly have them all, maybe take a couple off. But, I wonder if we were to, decide to go forward with, for example, the solar overlay, if we would also try to think ahead about a way to have a meeting dedicated to public information ahead of town meeting so that maybe we could have like a small sampling of the questions. I don't know if it works, or some sort of public education that specifically outlines the process, the vote, the implications, to try and minimize the length of time we're talking about it. I know there's no guarantee, but I'm a little concerned about the time that a really complicated article with a lot of attention takes at town meeting to talk about. And I'm a little concerned about just postponing it because I think that it's something that a lot of people really want to see us take to town meeting floor.
Thanks, Muriel. Mary.
Yes, I'm torn like Muriel, based on the public safety. This will definitely require a lot of discussion. I don't know that there's any way to head off that. I think it's going to take basically a rehash of the presentation that we gave at our public hearings in the planning board, and it will entail a great deal of discussion. So that being said, I have spoken to residents who are concerned about this being taken off, that feel very strongly about it staying on, and particularly in relation to the Liberty Mutual property. And I believe there's even a citizen's petition to offer, to compel or make a resolution recommending that the town buy the property. And I don't know I don't know anything about that citizen's petition other than, what was told to me verbally. But yes, so I do believe that there's strong feelings to have this on the discussion. So, at town meeting.
Thanks, Mary. Dave.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say that I think this is the only time-sensitive article that we have, and the reason I say that it's time-sensitive is for everything that Rob discussed.
Okay. Sundar or Deb, do you guys have any additional thoughts?
Well, my thought would be to take off, if we were going to remove the ones that were more minor, that the minor ones would be from 1 through 5. My concern is that if they do start construction, it would be awfully nice to have some sort of written document for the temporary signs. So that's the only question I have about mixing number 6. But as far as number 7 is, I think there's enough precedence in our conversations in our open meetings that makes this a very vital conversation and important to have at town meeting.
Sundar?
So, Gary, I think, sorry, Mr. Chair, sorry, I truly feel that the Seaboard Solar proposal has to be discussed. I mean, the town wants to discuss that. There is a lot of strong opinions on that. So, I think this forum should make every effort to make sure there is time available for that. So, in that regard, I personally am comfortable removing Articles 1 through 6 from our listing, so that enough time is set aside for the solar overlay discussion.
Okay. So, I'll just again share my perspective, and I think I think 1 through 5 to me are pretty clear cut. I think Deb raises some good points on the 6th one on the temporary signage, but I'd also say that that one still isn't a big concern for me, because the only risk of that not going through now is if the zoning enforcement officer chooses to enforce the current bylaws. And so at the end of the day, I think there's a lot of workarounds, and I think given the extraordinary circumstances, I'm not overly concerned about about there being a lot of construction before town meeting and somebody not being able to appropriately have appropriate signage for their business. And I think it's the right thing to do to push it through, because I think it formalizes it. But extraordinary circumstances, I'm not overly concerned about that being a big issue. On the solar overlay, like everyone, I'm really torn here. I think it is important. There is some timeliness to it. I think what hangs me up on it is that I really worry, and we talked about this when we discussed it previously. I'm really concerned that I think there's some risk in it not passing, because I think that there are some ways that we could make it stronger. And that doesn't mean that we shouldn't discuss it, and that doesn't mean that it's not important. I think that for people, I mean, obviously, I think we're all supportive of it. We've, I think, voted unanimously to move it forward. But for people that are against it, there are a lot of ways for them to poke holes in the process and really undermine what we are trying to do here. And so, my opinion, I still go back to my original perspective that I think that if we were to withdraw it, it buys us some time to make a much stronger recommendation that I think has a much greater likelihood of being approved at town meeting. And so that's just kind of where I stand. I do think it needs to be discussed. I do think there's a timeliness to it. I also am just a little bit concerned that it's going to be easy for people to create some doubt and sway whoever is at town meeting that it needs more time. So, Deb, I see your hand raised there.
Yeah, I think you bring a really good point to the table, Gary. I appreciate it. However, I think that there's enough of a threat from some of these high-speed developers who are really ready to go solar and take down, forested areas, even pending, people are stripping their land and threatening to do things to, in neighborhoods nearby. So I just think it has a very timely feel about it, so that we have some sense of some sort of control of some of these solar farms without negative effects of contractors going in and doing what they will to properties. I do feel that, but I did want to ask you a question. So just racking your brain for a minute, you say you would improve it. What would be some of your thoughts about how you would improve it?
I go back to some of the things we discussed earlier about having more, about having clearer criteria for what makes a preferred parcel for commercial solar. And I don't think we really ever did that. No. And at the end of the day, I think there's just some open debate about, or some different perspectives out there about how the properties were selected, and that the properties that were selected were not as well thought out as they could have been. So in my opinion, having a very well-defined criteria for what makes a good parcel for commercial solar, I think provides a lot of clarity for the article. So, yeah, go ahead, Jane.
Okay, so to answer Deb's question, there are multiple layers of protection that we could, through SAC, through Planning Board, write into and strengthen a solar bylaw so that homeowners, property owners, and neighborhoods and the companies can all live together. For instance, some of the towns that I've looked into that have these do not allow anything over an 8% grade. And even that can be leveled. So you can, if we have some strong language in there, we could allow a certain amount of solar panels and then have them level it. If you've seen those hills over on Legacy Farms, you could flatten them, put more plantings in, and then do another layer of solar farms so that hopefully people, from the roads and the various neighborhoods won't see them. And there are other things you can do with plantings. There are other things you can do with mitigating and fortifying.
Excuse me, I have a point of order.
What I'm trying to explain to them.
Hang on.
Things.
Yeah,
I interrupted. We can get back to if this is overruled, but a point of order. I think we're reopening a vote that we already took. I think the only discussion today should be whether to safely have this or not, because one of the important things that we all voted on last time was to let the town speak. And I think excuse me if I'm being crude, but I think what Gary and Jane are trying to reopen some of the discussion that we already had that was a closed issue.
So,
well, I think we're
hang on, Jane, hang on. Jane, hang on. So, through the chair, and I'll address Dave's question.
Sure.
Number one, I was responding to Deb's question about what might change and what might be the benefit of withdrawing. I do agree with you that the new piece of information here is the request to withdraw in order for the safety of those that are attending town meetings. So I think there's some validity in your point of order, Dave. I think we do need to be careful about the discussion because this is not a public hearing to discuss the article itself. It's to make a decision as to whether or not we should withdraw the article, to your point.
I thought we were discussing why we should or should not offer it out there. And I think there are some other options. To your point, Gary, I think you were the first one to bring that up. That there are things, and then Deb asked why, and I answered it. But
so just for the chair, just to finish up, I just wanted to say that I wasn't trying to blame anybody. I was just trying to basically stop the conversation.
Understand. So I'm going to let Jane finish, and then we're going to, and then we'll move forward here. But go ahead, Jane.
so anyway, so I think some of the discussion that's going to come out of the special town meeting that could take a long period of time is that people are going to threaten lawsuits. And the other thing that I've picked up, Mary talked about people speaking, some of the people that have contacted me own some of these properties, and what they're going to do is if we make solar farms so restrictive and they don't have a choice, they're going to go in there and clear cut. They're going to get rid of all of the trees on their property. And there's nothing to say that they can't do that. So I would think that we would, maybe Zach or somebody else could come up with some other options. That's all I'm saying.
Thanks, Jane. So just kind of what I'm hearing here, it sounds like people are pretty comfortable with where their thoughts are on commercial solar. What I'm thinking, and please object if you think otherwise, but what I'm thinking is what we do is we take a vote on whether or not we should withdraw the commercial solar photovoltaic overlay district, and we vote on that one separately. And then we take a vote on the other 6 cumulatively as one group. Is that reasonable to everybody?
Okay.
Head nods? Yes? Okay. So then I guess at this point I will entertain a motion to, let me make sure I get this language right, to withdraw the commercial, the establishment, the town meeting article to establish the commercial solar photovoltaic overlay district and amend the zoning map to place all or a portion of the indicated parcels within the commercial solar photovoltaic overlay district. I'm stating this in affirmative because that's what was asked of us by the town if we would consider withdrawing. So
moved.
Lori Larson Marlowe, second.
thanks, Rob and Mary. Any further discussion? Okay, so we'll do a roll call vote. And
Sorry, there is a hand raised from a person in the public. I don't know if we're taking public comment. I didn't know what that, yeah, I just.
Thanks, Mary, for pointing that out. So we are not required to take public comment, but I think as a board, we've always made sure that we give people the opportunity to share their perspective. So I am willing to allow this person to share, but I will say that we are going to have a strict enforcement of the 3-minute rule. So whoever is at this number, if you can state your name and address, and by all means, please give us your thoughts in 3 minutes or less.
All right, this is Ann Karnowski. I have a group, a citizens group. We are situated over on Route 135, a short walk from 71 Franklin Road. This is our only enjoyment, is going over there and using the trails without worrying about the shininess and the destruction of Seaboard Solar, all right? It would put us at ease if you would just allow this to be on there, okay? Otherwise, it will cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars in suits, which we intend to do. You could be saving us all this anguish if you could just simply leave that on there. And I have a companion article for a town meeting, which you can't withdraw because it's my own article, about asking if the town will use community preservation funds to preserve and buy this forest. So please don't take this opportunity away from us.
Okay. Thank you, Ann. I appreciate you calling in and providing your comments. So thank you. And it looks like we also, do we have a hand raised from Ed? He lowered his hand.
Okay, so last time I did this, I wasn't able to do it properly.
Yes, we can hear you if you can give us your full name and address.
And I'll be quick, I don't need 2 minutes. My name is Edward Cutter. My wife and I live at 21 Wilson Street. About a year ago, a permit was granted for the property next door. So I've been through exactly what other people are talking about. But what I regard it as residential. I appreciate what I regard as residential, having a solar farm next door, and I'm not happy, of course. I very much appreciate what the planning board has been doing to try to get some control over this, and I think it should not hesitate to get something in place. Don't let the striving for something that's perfect hold up something, this is a bad quote, something that's good. If you think that it can be improved later, improve it later, but don't sit back on it now. I speak for, not for me really, but for other persons that were similarly situated, and I wish that this had been considered earlier. That's about it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ed. And we've got one more comment. This is going to be the last one that we allow because we do have to move forward because we have another planning board meeting starting shortly. But Mr. Robertson, you've got 3 minutes. If you can start with introducing your name, you get to provide us with your name and address.
He's still on mute.
Nope.
He appears to still be on mute.
I've unmuted him. He needs to unmute himself.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Robertson, can you unmute yourself?
Hello.
There you are. Now we can hear you.
Great. I guess I wanted to make just a general comment that by cherry picking which articles are put forth at the town meeting, you're really just usurping public voting rights. And months of public testimony and deliberations went into the formulation of these articles. And voting now to quash some of these articles is an abuse of your positions and a slap in the face of every community member and the town officials who've labored so hard to come up with the articles thought to be in the town's best interest. And, we're talking about the pandemic necessitating this type of action. We've in terms of the Franklin Solar Project, which of course have been involved with, you've gone forward with that business, which was clearly non-essential to the community to have that special permit provided, and hearings, were held that were exclusionary and discriminatory and unduly favored the applicant over the rest of the community. And now when we have an opportunity to actually hear from the rest of the community, it's being suggested that to hear the community would be in disinterest of the community health because of the pandemic, and that just is contradictory motivations. And finally, we're talking about this particular vote and this particular solar overlay vote. It's already, as I guess a couple of the board members already said, it's already been decided to push it through. A separate vote was taken specifically on this article to include it, and now you're effectively reversing that vote, which this whole process seems patently unfair and a attempt to quash public input. If the town meeting can't be held safely, then it shouldn't be held. And if it can be held, then it should do what the town meeting is supposed to do, which is to provide the community input into our town affairs.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Robertson.
And just to finish, I don't think any of these articles should be removed, regardless if that's your decision as to what's essential and what isn't essential, and that's really not your place or position. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Robertson. Okay, so let's go ahead and move to the roll call vote. And again, just a reminder that if you vote yes, you are voting to withdraw the commercial solar overlay district from the town meeting discussion. So Gary Trendle? No. And we'll go to Deb?
Deborah Feinberg, no.
Muriel?
Muriel Kramer, no.
Mary?
Mary Larson Marlowe, no.
Jane?
Jane Moran, yes.
Dave?
Hey, Paul, no.
Rob?
Rob Benson, no.
And Sundar?
Sundar Sivaraman, no.
Okay. So this article will then stay on the town meeting agenda. All right. So next, I'd like to group the first six. So I will entertain a motion to withdraw the following articles from the town meeting agenda. And those would be to amend Article 19, to modify Article 16, modify Article 18, modify Article 6A, amend Article 8A, and amend Article 27 as noted in the meeting packet.
Rob Benson, so moved.
Mary Larson Marlowe, second.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Just a question.
Yes?
We vote no, it'll be withdrawn, correct?
No. So the motion is to withdraw them. So if you vote
okay.
yes, it will be withdrawn.
Okay, so it's the opposite. Okay, thank you.
Nope, same as the other one.
Oh, right.
No,
Confused. Sorry.
other way around.
These negatives are confusing me.
Yes, I know. Sorry. So if you vote yes, we are withdrawing the articles from the town meeting warrant.
Okay.
Okay.
So this is the same as the other.
Gary Trendle, yes. Deb?
Deborah Feinberg, no.
Muriel?
Muriel Kramer, no.
Mary?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Jane?
Jane Moran, yes.
Dave?
Dave Paul, no.
Rob?
Rob Benson, no.
And Sundar.
Sundar Suraman, yes.
Okay, so if I do my math here, we have a tie.
Sure, yeah.
What does Robert's Rules of Order say? If it's
Question?
a tie,
It doesn't pass.
That's true. It doesn't pass.
So therefore,
They're not withdrawn.
are not withdrawn.
So
Is it a simple majority rule?
it is a simple majority.
Okay.
So, question for the group, and of those people that voted no, and again, I'm just thinking to the objective here. I'm wondering if the consensus among those that voted no was because we should keep all of them on because we deem them important enough to have a public hearing, or if there is some opportunity, or if there are any particular articles that you think are essential and necessary that should move forward while there are others that are not.
For me, it was all of them.
Gary, through the chair, can I make my comment on my opinion? It's uncertain times where we live in, where there's no guarantee there's a town meeting in May of 2021. There's no guarantee of a town meeting at any point in time. So just a delay, it seems to me, I feel it's an indefinite delay, and I can't. That's the problem I have. If I knew it was going to be definitive, but the world we live in now, the mass group gatherings, I feel it's an indefinite delay, and that's my issue.
So, Rob, can I just ask a question? So, in your opinion, and you've spoken pretty strongly about this, what are the repercussions if these don't move forward in 2020?
The reality is, there's a percent chance they have an impact. There's a percent chance they have no impacts, and the percent chance they have no impact is definitely greater than the percent chance they have a significant impact. But I just don't. That's not what we, as the planning board, we're not. We're trying to make a judgment on impact. I find that's an unfair position. I think the best thing is for us to put our best foot forward, and we've taken public input on these, and the time at town meeting for what I would call the ones that don't, the lower impact ones, the less impact, the less they'll be discussed, and so to just delay them doesn't make sense to me. Like changing wording on an article is. I can't imagine that's more than a 5 minute, like a couple minute thing.
So through the chair, Gary.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Dave.
I just want to say, I think your first question was a valid question, but I think the fact that Rob voted for all of them to stay on, and I voted for all of them to stay on, I think any other discussion other than that is kind of unwarranted.
So just to clarify, you didn't vote for all of them to stay on. You voted to not withdraw all of them. So my question is to clarify if in fact your belief is that they should definitely all be on, which is okay, or if there were particular articles that you think are more important than others.
Right. That's what I was saying. I think that's totally fine.
Okay.
But I think Rob said he was all or none, and I'm all or none also. It's not. Okay. There's not any specific one. So.
Okay. Zariel, do you have any? Sorry. Go ahead, Sundar.
To the chair. So, so given that the way we voted right now, does the select board have any authority to override this vote and say no? It doesn't matter what you thought. We can actually. This is okay. Okay.
Yep. That's correct.
Thank you.
Mary, go ahead.
Yeah. So, I'm actually really torn. But if we are going to have the one that is going to have the biggest discussion likely, for me, there is 0% in not getting them all done.
Okay. So Sounds like, as a board, we are not going to withdraw any of the articles from town meeting. So,
Can I say one more thing?
yes,
And we always do a really good job to be prepared, but I think this year, no pressure, Gary. But the more we can do to be really prepared, really clear, maybe even anticipate some questions and put out information sheets. We don't usually print out information because we don't like to kill trees. Or we just have a really succinct but really detailed presentation. It might help move the meeting forward more quickly.
so on that note, since as a board we do want to keep all of these, my next question, and we've got to wrap up pretty shortly here, but I'd like to ask for some volunteers to help prepare those materials, because candidly, I'm not looking forward to, number one, telling the select board that we didn't withdraw any of them, and two, I'm going to be the one that has to stand up and convince everybody why these are so essential and important that we do include them on a town meeting agenda in a pandemic. So I will do that, and I'll do the best I can to represent the board, but I'd also like to ask for the board's help in preparing those materials and making sure that we do put our best foot forward.
Yeah, I'm happy to take whatever ones you would like to offload.
Yeah.
Me too, Gary.
Yeah, and I'd be happy to help as well.
Through the chair, I have a basic question. Did I wanted to withdraw 1 through 6 from the warrant? Did I do that or did I not?
No, you voted to withdraw them.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you.
It was still 4-4.
Okay.
So, yeah. Okay.
I have some slides that obviously had been prepared along the way for these planning board meetings, and so I will send those around as a starting point. But they're absolutely open for editing and addition, anything.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I'll send them along.
Process question for John. So when we're working through these types of materials, I assume that we've got to be. Can those be shared? Can can we collaborate as a group by email to produce those, or is that something that is better left, say, between Mary and I to produce and then share out to the groups so that we make sure that we're avoiding any open meeting violations?
Yeah, so it's better if you work in pairs or individually and then share the information. There should be no deliberation between the board members that is not held within a public meeting.
Okay.
Aside from like one-on-one conversations.
Okay, but these are deliberations. These are just laying down on slides.
Yeah, they are, in a sense. They can be interpreted as such. So to be safe, don't do it.
That's fine. Okay. So Mary, if you can help me with the solar overlay,
sure,
that'd be great. Deb, I know you have strong feelings on the temporary signage. So would you be willing to take the lead on producing those materials to support that? And I would say that aside from the solar overlay, I'd like to make these as concise as possible, because I guess what I'm thinking is we probably have maybe a one-pager on the first 6, and then we have some additional materials on the solar overlay. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. So it shouldn't be too much work. I think it's literally kind of a few bullet points, and that's probably it. So actually, on that note, maybe what I'll do is I'll just create a quick template, and I'll ask specific people to help populate the context within that template. Dave?
So Gary, I just want to let you know that at the town meeting that I won't leave you out there alone to be attacked. If you need to defer to me for any justification of why I voted to keep these on the agenda, just feel free to do that.
Yeah. Thanks, Dave. Okay. So if it's all right, I know we're up on time, and I know that we wanted to join the select board a little bit early just in case they're running ahead of schedule. So I'll reach out to a few of you on with a template on these other articles. And at this point, I think I'll entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Mary Larson Marlowe, second.
All right, so we'll move the roll call vote. Gary Trendall, yes. Deb?
Deborah Feinberg, yes.
Muriel?
Carol Kramer, yes.
Mary?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Jane?
Jane Moran, yes.
Dave?
Hey, Paul, yes.
Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
And Sundar?
Sundar, yes.
Okay. We'll talk to everyone again in a few minutes. Just a reminder, it is a different Zoom invite. So make sure you use the...
Yeah, where do we find that? Sorry, I found the agenda for the meeting, but I'm not sure where to find the link.
Gary's reply had just the two meeting invites on it, right, Gary?
Yes, it's in the email from John. I can resend it right now if you like.
So there's two agendas, the one for this meeting and the one for the joint meeting with the select board. The Zoom link is in that meeting, is on that agenda, whatever the other Zoom link